Alrighty y'all, it is a Fate So Twisted here, and let's just get started on this right away. We're doing this Simplicity 7456 top pattern. This is a pattern from the 80s, really simple. You're going to need every piece except for that super long piece, unless you want to do the pleated part. So we're cutting out 2 of those sleeves, 1 of that middle panel, and then we're going to do 2 pieces for the front part, and well, I'm going out of order here, but that's the neckline for the back. And we're going to have 2 pieces for the front part and 1 piece for the back of the shirt. Alright, so the first step in constructing this shirt is I'm going to take that middle panel and fold that piece over. You can actually mark this if it's better for you to do the markings that are on the pattern pieces. I just don't do that. I'm kind of good at guesstimating. Sometimes I'm a little off, but I also go in, and I don't show it here in the video, but I take the front panels of the side panels of the shirt and make sure that it is all lined up and in the right place. So once I've got that pressed and folded over, I'm just going to sew a line, and I do that on the top, and I'm just feeling with my fingers where that bottom part of that fold over is, and I like to do it on the top like that to make sure that I have it sewn even and it's not all wonky and funny looking. So and then the next step is going to be to sew those side panels on, and you do really need to mark that. I went back in and laid my pattern piece on there and marked that little dot so I would know how high up to put those shoulder pieces. And I'm just going to do that. And I'm not really going to pin a whole lot on the first piece, but you'll see me on the second piece. I kind of pinned it all the way down, and that's because I was sewing from the opposite end. And I just want to throw out a quick reminder while you're watching me do this part to like, share, and subscribe. Help me get to that front page of the YouTube search. I do regular sewing tutorials on Tuesdays. Occasionally I skip a Tuesday because I have a lot of irons in the fire. I'm making tumblers and doing other crafty things for the holidays. So I usually do try to load every Tuesday, but just be sure to, like, share, and subscribe. Get me out there, y'all. And links to my social media pages can be found in the description box below, as well as some affiliate links or links to products that I use in my videos. Alright, so this is what it looks like when you have those side panels sewn onto the front. And now we're just going to press down those sides and just make sure those seams are nice and neat. I like to press those seams facing outside the shirt, like towards your arms. It's just, I don't have a serger or anything. If you do have a serger, or you can do a tight zigzag stitch on those seam raw edges, that would be a really awesome idea. So I'm just pressing this down, and then we'll move on to the next step. So my next step is to go ahead and prep this neck lining, and I'm just gonna, the outside edges of it, I'm gonna fold over about 1/3 of an inch and just press them, and then I'm gonna do a loose stitch or a longer stitch just to keep that in place. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. That's why I don't do a really tiny stitch, because I'm not trying to keep it together. I'm just trying to make it look neat. So you see there, I've got that sewn. Now I'm going to set that aside, and we're going to go ahead and work on putting the top together. So I've got the back side, and with right sides facing together, I'm going to line up those tops of the shoulders, and I'm just going to sew those on. And you'll see me do that, and then I'll come back with the next step. This pattern is actually from the 80s, and it is one that my mother gave me years ago. It was actually, this one was uncut, but she had a lot of multiples because she made all of my clothes when I was in school, and that started from kindergarten on up to high school. I loved it. I loved for Mama to make my clothes. And this was one of the blouses that I had quite a few of. I really loved them. I loved it when Mama did the pleated panel in the middle. That's a project for another time for me. I can't quite do that. Okay, so now that we have the two pieces of the shirt body together, we're going to sew that neckline on. And it's just, this is going to take some very careful pinning, and I just pinned mostly at the corners because I want to make sure that those corners are lined up. But you're going to sew all around that edge. I stopped short of where the yellow panel in the front goes, but I would recommend that you do try to sew that on there because it caused a little bit of a problem for me. It kept poking out, and it was, just looks kind of messy. But this is my first time sewing this shirt, so I'm not ashamed of the way it turned out. I did pretty good, I think, considering that I haven't done it before. It's actually not super complicated. It's just one of those projects where you really have to take your time with certain steps. And doing this neckline is definitely one of those steps that you have to take your time, because you could end up getting it bunched up. Things won't go right if you don't take your time, basically. Okay, so an important step is to clip those corners. Don't clip the seam, but you want to clip at close to the seam. And I just did a couple of extra clips because that's what I saw in the pattern instructions, but you don't really need to do that one. So here's another one of those tricky steps that's going to kind of drive you a little bat crazy. You just have to take your time and fold over and press, and it really is a process where you want to take your time, because if you got a little wrinkle in that little corner there, when you flip it over, it's going to show through. So you just want to do some pulling and some pressing and just keep it going till you get it right. Okay, so once you have that turned right side out, you want to stitch all around that edge of the neck, starting from that yellow panel in mine to all the way around the back. And you just want to stitch it so that it doesn't, when you wash it, it's going to come out if you don't do that. So I've done that already. And now I'm going to line up the side panels, matching the ends of the shoulder, the underarm piece, all the way down to the bottom of the waist. And I'm just going to sew each one about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now, I get asked the question a lot, what sewing machine I'm using. In this video, I'm using my Viking Husqvarna #1. It was gifted to me by a lovely subscriber named Margie. Margie is the best. She gifted this to me about 4 or 5 years ago, and I absolutely love it. Okay, so now we're going to start on those little sleeves, and I chose these smaller sleeves for this one just because it's kind of a memory for me. My mom always made these shirts for me in the summer, and I like the smaller sleeves. So I'm folding them over, and then I'm going to do a basting stitch, or just a stitch to hold that together on that curved edge there on both of them. And then the next thing we're going to do is fold those sleeves over, and when you fold them over, you want them to the edges to line up. You don't want a point sticking out, if you get what I'm saying. They cross over like that, and then we're going to put them in the armholes of the shirt. So I find with smaller things like this, I don't like to go crazy with the pins. I used to do that, and you're just going to stick yourself a million times. You're going to get frustrated. Pins are going to get stuck. They might get sewn through. So you want to be sure that I'm just pinning on the end there, matching up that where I crossed them over with the seam line on under the arm. And what I'll do when I get to the machine is I'll actually pull out those pins that I use to hold the sleeve together, because they're absolutely going to get in the way. You just don't want to leave those in there. You're going to sew over it. They're not going to be facing the right way, and you may end up sewing over a pin. So This is another process where you just have to be really careful, and you don't want to stretch the material, but you want to pull it taut so that you know that everything's lining up correctly. And if you get some bunching or some gathering in that, you just want to just stop what you're doing, take the seam ripper, rip it out, and start all over. Just fold that sleeve over until you get it matching. It's just a little tricky with stuff like this, but you know, if you're not hard-headed like me and you want to go ahead and use the markings on the pattern pieces, that definitely helps. So I'm sewing both sleeves here, and then I will show you the next step. Alright, so this is what it looks like with the sleeves once you've got those on there. I might recommend a little bit of pressing, and you know, you got to pull and press and get everything right. So I'm going to turn it back wrong side out, and we're going to do that hem. And I will say this, and I am unapologetic, I do not do typical hems. It just has always been difficult for me, so this is one of my go-to. I just fold over about a 1/2 inch, and I sew that all the way down, and then I fold it again over itself, and then I seam 2 lines, one close to the top edge that's inside the shirt and one on the bottom edge. Just makes it look a little neater, kind of gives it that pressed look. But you'll see me do that here. So we kind of hit the jackpot with some vintage patterns at the Salvation Army thrift store the other day. So I think I'm going to try to do quite a few of those patterns here so that y'all can see how they're sewn. I am a big fan of older patterns. I think they're more simplified and they're just easier to put together. They don't have 1,000 complicated pattern pieces to confuse newbies. So anyway, there you have it. There is our finished shirt. I think it's cute. Just brings back a lot of memories for me. I just wish I could have found fabric that matched the 80s style. But anyway, I like the way it turned out. It's really cute, really simple. If you're a new sewer, this is going to be an easy project for you. Hope you enjoyed. Peace, y'all. Bye-bye.